In real estate, everyone talks about winning deals, but what if the smartest move is knowing when to walk away? I'm Tim Graham, and the Property Playbook starts now. Today, I'm joined by Lisa Britcliffe, co-founder of Orium Co, a boutique advocacy firm built on trust, experience, and putting clients first. With over 40 years of combined experience, Lisa and her team guide buyers and sellers through one of life's biggest decisions, not by chasing transactions, but by protecting outcomes. Lisa, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for inviting me on, Tim.
That's all right. Why don't we start? Tell us a little bit about Orium Co.
The founders being Damien and I, so our background is residential sales, so combined we have over 40 years experience. And a number of years ago we talked about starting an advocacy, having had experience through most of the areas throughout Melbourne. And with the idea of actually being client-led. Now, the industry on a whole, you know, obviously there's been changes along the way, but what we saw was an opportunity for to really be client-led in an area of where people are going through other major transitions, be that separation, divorce, loss of a loved one, blended families. And it sort of lent itself very much to not only the real estate experience, but also I'd spent a number of years coaching people through major life transitions.
Yeah, wow.
And so we saw an opportunity to really pair the two and to take that out into the industry and to be able to support people in all areas throughout Melbourne, both from a selling perspective, because obviously having sold and bought thousands of homes together, we'd worked a number of markets. We knew we had a really solid network of agents across Melbourne, and we just knew that we could do something really. And look, I'm not saying that there's not a lot of great agents out there, but we really felt called to work particularly in this space. And so we work in the vendor and buyer advocacy space. Sometimes individually we're helping people sell and sometimes just helping people buy. But what we've found over the course of our journey is we're also helping more and more people through through the process of both, which is actually so rewarding.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so fulfilling for the other person, because you're walking your hand in hand with them through the whole process, so they have confidence and clarity. You're helping them every step of the way with due diligence and agents, you know, the whole gamut, and I've really loved that.
Yeah. Well, I must say, obviously finding real estate agents that are knowledgeable, you know, not too hard to find, but having somebody who can sort of understand what somebody's going through in that, you know, a tumultuous time of a separation and things like that, I can see by knowing you. And I must admit, I was referred to you by one of our mutual colleagues, and then since meeting you, I feel like my connections in Melbourne have become much larger. You're a very good connector. So I could see why a lot of your customers would feel that trust and that, you know, be willing to let you take the lead on a lot of these things. So is that really what makes your business stand out? Because that's what it seems from the outset.
I think, you know, when you get to a certain age, I'm, you know, in my 50s now, you know what you're good at, you know what you've been gifted to do and what you're not great at. And one of the things, as you've just mentioned, is I went back in my real estate days, I probably didn't recognise that I was really great at building relationships, but also matching, connecting people, but also, and then through the coaching as well, what I understood is not only am I a connector, I'm a connector of people, which is what I do. I do that just it's a natural thing. But I also am connecting people to information and connecting people now to property. So it's all the same thing. Yeah. And so I can see how, you know, when we have a client, my understanding to connect to them, to be able to connect to what it is that they actually really, what's driving them,
what they're going through,
what they're really wanting in the next season, for a home to be a home, because predominantly we do buy investment properties. My passion is really buying homes for people and having them feel at home wherever that might be. And so, you know, really connecting in with people to understand what their drivers are, what's going to actually support them to find that home and to feel at home, to build that next chapter. It's so deeply fulfilling to do that. And for people on the other side, not only for it to have been a really good process where they've trusted us implicitly along the way. And I think, you know, one of the things you wanted to talk about was how we help people feel confident and how we build trust. And it was a question somebody asked in another interview. It was like, you make people feel safe. And so safety equates to trust. So if they know that I'm on their page that I actually am deeply interested in what it is that they want, not what I want.
Yeah.
That it's about what they're interested in, not what I need to happen. Then people trust you.
The thing with real estate, especially as a homeowner, is it becomes a very emotional process, doesn't it? Like, you know, I've found the house, it ticks the boxes for me, I love it, Lisa, when can we buy it? And something I noticed one of your LinkedIn posts recently, and the topic of the conversation today is that sometimes it's not actually about the deals that you win, it's the ones that you actually have to say no to. So talk to us a little bit about one of those recent experiences.
So, I know it sounds a bit airy-fairy, but I just know when I go through a property, whether it's one we want to pursue. And as soon as I stepped in the door, I just got a sense. So what I got a sense of, which was then backed in the due diligence, was number one, when Damien and I looked at it from the streetscape, there was a commercial property next door which had been leased out for a number of years, but as we know, life can change, things can change. If it was to be sold, there'd be potential for it to be redeveloped, which would be adjoining to this property, which would remove these slithers of the bay that you could see, which would also change light. One of the things that I always look at for properties is we want loads of natural light. So that would change that. So it would completely change the property that we'd be buying. The other thing was the quality of the build, but the design also.
Yeah, I'm a big one on floor plans. You know, there's just such especially an older property where there's just lacked a lot of practicality, and then you know, a lot of properties that might have only had one bathroom, and then they go, we need a second bathroom, and they put this at the opposite end of the house, and you've got to walk through the living space to get there. All of those design faults, and that's a big one that a lot of people overlook.
But also, this was a newer property, and so it was already done. So to redesign it, and then they'd put, anyway, so the body corporate was also big.
Right, body corporate involved.
Body corporate, so the body corporate was high, there was potential for more levies to have to be raised for some work to be done. It was just like Red Cross after Red Cross.
And how do you navigate that when you've got a buyer who has said, Lisa, we think this is the one?
Information.
Yeah.
So it's objective, you know. We've done the due diligence, we're providing the information, that's why you've engaged us. Of course there's going to be, you know in life people are going to be disappointed because they have an idea or an expectation thinking it's going to be, this is going to be the one. But knowing life is full of disappointments, does that mean that actually you avoid disappointing someone to make sure that they make a really great decision? And so, I've been let down, I've let other people down, but ultimately, what do we want for our clients? We want them to move into a home that they don't regret in 5-10 years' time. And of course, things can change. So, as he said, I'm disappointed, but I know based on everything you've shared with me,
we've made the right decision.
We've made the right decision. And we're looking at a number of other properties for him right now, and I've actually seen one that I think ticks all the requirements and actually would be a really great property for him to buy.
So the flip side of this is if they had have proceeded with that property and maybe not had your advice, the consequences of that can be incredibly substantial, not only in terms of stamp duty costs if you had to sell and rebuy, and the expenses of selling and all those types of things, but also what about the possibility if you did have a development that started to happen next door and they try to sell because they want to get out, and all of a sudden the property's not worth what they paid for it?
Oh, well, we're seeing that. We're seeing that all across Melbourne. Absolutely, if a property was built next door and it would be higher than the property that we were looking at for him, there would be, as I said, we'd be looking to sell a property that we didn't buy. And so it could slash hundreds of thousands of dollars off when you've no longer got a bay view that you're able to market.
And the irony of all of this as well is that it's quite often a lot of people think, look, I don't think I want to pay for a buyer's agent. I mean, it's such a false economy to think that that small fee that they could be paying to somebody who's got that experience could save them hundreds of thousands of dollars. I mean, the price that you pay in your fee for an agent is so minimal in the scheme of things.
And the other thing, that property has come down about $80,000 in price since we looked at it.
Yeah, wow.
So you get a buyer that goes and looks at it, goes, this is actually feasible, because he was seeing value in that, pays that, paying over the odds, even though apparently there were other buyers that were interested. And there was enough red flags to think that that would not be the case at the price range in which they were talking. Of course, if it comes back significantly, then there'll be compromise for someone in the pool of who are looking to buy in that area. But hundreds of thousands of dollars. But also, he's in a process of building, not he's at that point in his life, where he's building. His next property will be greater, not less than. And so for that to happen,
stepping stone.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You need to make sure that this choice is a really solid choice. So he's actually not losing out. He's winning.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah.
You mentioned red flags. What other red flags do you come across?
So body corporates are obviously a big one. Not looking in and doing it, we call it a DNA of the body corporate to really understand what's going on, what might be coming up. This particular property was one of them. A lot of people don't get building inspections.
Well, the building inspection, but if there is a body corporate as well, the general areas of the building as well, not just the unit that you might be buying or the townhouse you might be buying.
That's exactly right. So that the actual building itself, we're shocked by how many people don't do building inspections. To me, that's a huge red flag. As we talked about the design of a property or the scope, if they're wanting to do something, the feasibility of that happening and the cost involved of doing that. And probably it's not so much a red flag, but we talked about buying badly, which I suppose kind of comes into it, is rushing into making a choice and not preparing and not actually spending the time to look at, as we talked about, things like comparable sales. What is the real value? What's the design? What's the forecasted growth in this area? What's the streetscape? What's potentially going to happen in the street over the course? Because we know, government's trying to get as much building as possible, and levels of buildings are higher. So streetscape and looking at that can be potential red flags as to what potentially can happen over the course of 5 to 10 years. Yeah,
very interesting. Well, finally, if anybody was out there at the moment thinking I'm ready to go in and start to look for my next property, what sort of tips should you be giving these people at the moment, that especially in a market like Melbourne where it's really starting to pick up, a bit of FOMO in the market, what sort of tips would you give them?
Well, be prepared, don't rush. So be prepared in the sense that have all your ducks lined up. You need your finance all sorted. You need a conveyancer, so you can get the conveyancer to review the contract as soon as you've seen a property. If you're going to engage an advocate, make sure that they're obviously on board. Know about the prices in the area, so be able to have access to a platform that actually you can look at what else is sold. What else can you do to prepare? And then when you see that property, then you can be ready to go. Because some people think you have to act. You are ready to go when that property arises, because otherwise you do potentially miss out. And do your numbers. If this comes up, would we be willing to walk away let's say in 5 months' time or 6 months' time? Would we regret if we didn't extend a little bit more? Yeah,
solid advice. Lisa Britcliffe, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Good on you. Well, folks, that's the play for today. This program's been brought to you by hotspotting.com.au. This is Ticker. We'll be right back.